The views and opinions expressed on America's Workforce Union podcast and its digital media channels are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the producers or sponsors.
Welcome to the America's Workforce Radio Podcast, the flagship production of the American Workers Radio and Podcast Network, where organized labor and its never-ending fight to protect the rights of the American worker come first. Now, presented by LIUNA, Laborers International Union of North America. Here's your host, Ed Flash Ferentz.
Teamsters forced out on strike at Cargill Salt in California. Meanwhile, the union has come out supporting Amazon drivers in New York City. And today on the show, the California State Building Trades and why Proposition 45 needs to go down. Welcome to the Friday, August 14th edition of America's Workforce, where we're available on at least 5 platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. Our featured guest on the show today is Chris Hannan. Who's Chris? He is president of the California Building and Construction Trades Council. Chris was sworn in as president in July of 2023 after being unanimously elected by the executive board, and he previously served as executive secretary of the Los Angeles Orange County Building Trades. In fact, we had him on the show several years ago when he was in that position. He's a 30-year union member, started his career as an apprentice at Sprinkler Fitters Local 709. That's part of the United Association, a great union there. Today, we are going to talk about Proposition 45. What's Proposition 45? Well, in a nutshell, it threatens good jobs, union jobs. It limits labor's role in project approvals, and it weakens incentives for project labor agreements and strong workforce standards. What they're saying about it, it's a great thing for California. It's going to help with affordable housing. It's going to help the community, but it does everything against that. And Chris is going to be on the show today to talk why they are opposing it. In fact, they've got a partnership with environmental groups as well, because if this happens in November, if voters pass it, it's going to hurt the environment. And he's going to explain that part. So he'll be our featured guest on the show today. I want to drive you to 2 websites. First, the Trades Council, the Building and Construction Trades Council. That's cabuildingtrades.org. CA, like California, cabuildingtrades.org. And they have a website to vote no on Proposition 45. And here it is, noprop45ca.com. noprop45ca.com. Chris Hannan, our featured guest right here on America's Workforce. Now, brief look into the world of labor. This segment brought to you by Boyd Watterson Asset Management. $38 billion of assets under advisement serving the needs of Taft-Hartley funds, corporations, public funds, endowments, foundations, and religious organizations. You can find more at boydwatterson.com. 120 members of Teamsters Local 853 at Cargill Salt, this is in Newark, California, have been forced out on strike over the company's unfair labor practices, which includes retaliating against a steward during contract talks. Now, in addition to fighting back against Cargill's behavior, workers are seeking a fair contract that addresses key wage and health insurance concerns as they negotiate a new agreement with the company. Steve Beck is Secretary-Treasurer of Local 853. Steve says this workforce keeps a critical supply chain running, and they deserve a contract that reflects their skill and value. A billion-dollar company has no excuse to cut the pay and benefits of its workers, and we want Cargill to take our concerns seriously instead of retaliating against our members. Now, the Teamsters at Cargill Salt harvest, process, and package sea salt at the Newark facility, one of the only sea salt operations of its kind in North America. How about that? Ever Duran is a worker there, and he's also steward at local 853. Ever says, for many of us, this is about supporting our families and planning for the future. We are the bedrock of the salt industry. We just want a contract that fairly reflects that. By the way, Teamsters Local 853 represents nearly 15,000 members across half a dozen industries in Northern California. And here's their website, teamsters853.org. Meanwhile, in New York City, the Teamsters Union has come out in strong support of the proposed Delivery Protection Act. The new law, authored by City Council member Tiffany Caban, would require companies operating last-mile distribution factories to obtain city licenses, establish basic safety and training standards, and directly hire their delivery drivers. Now, the act specifically seeks to outlaw the Amazon Delivery Service Partner, DSP system, which allows Amazon to contract with independent small businesses to employ delivery drivers rather than employing the drivers directly. Boy, aren't they sneaky? Sean O'Brien, who's the president of the Teamsters, has fully backed the bill, calling the DSP system the most dangerous business model in America today, as it allows Amazon to break the law while hiding behind shell companies it has total control over. So union reps also point to abrupt job loss and poor treatment of delivery drivers as further evidence this bill is needed. Now, the mayor of New York City, Zoran Mandami, has announced his support for the proposal, and he says it's time to end the subcontracting model that puts profits over people and build an economy that works for working New Yorkers. So we'll see what happens with that. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Proposition 45, why it needs to go down in California. Our featured guest is the president of the California Building and Construction Trades Council. Back in a few minutes, you're listening to America's Workforce.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
Hire union musicians. Call Music Talent of Cleveland at 216-881-1802. Call Music Talent of Cleveland as your dependable source for professional musicians in Northeast Ohio. Union musicians add harmony to weddings, elegance to parties, and uplifting music for all events. Music Talent of Cleveland contracts solo and ensemble musicians as well as bands and orchestras for single engagements. So hire union musicians. Call Music Talent of Cleveland today. 216-881-1802. America's Workforce is presented by the Laborers International Union of North America. Feel the power right now at liuna.org. The Heat and Frost Insulators and Allied Workers are proud to be a title sponsor for America's Workforce Radio. The Insulators Union is leading the way in the mechanical insulation industry, fire stopping, and infectious disease control. Regarded as North America's energy conservation specialists, these professionals are known for their professional work and dedication. You can learn more about the Insulators Union at insulators.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the United Steelworkers. You can find more at usw.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Communication Workers of America. You can find more at cwa-union.org. This segment of the show is brought to you by the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. For more information, please visit bmwe.org.
America's Workforce appreciates our sponsor, the Columbus Central Ohio Building and Construction Trades Council, who represents more than 18,000 workers from 19 affiliated local unions and district councils.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. Let's go to the state of California. Great state for workers, no doubt about that, especially union workers. And we're being joined right now by the president of the State Building and Construction Trades Council of California. That would be Chris Hannan, The State Building and Construction Trades Council in California is the largest construction trades council in the country, representing nearly 500,000 members in 14 different crafts, including roughly, Chris, I can't believe this, 70,000 apprentices training to be the next generation of California's skilled union workers. Let's start right there because that's a significant number. My hat is off to you because, every time I talk to a specific trade, the first thing they say is, we need workers. We need workers. And I know a lot's going on in California. We're going to talk about that. More importantly, we want to talk about this Proposition 45. We'll get into that. But the state of the economy there, skilled trades, talk to me about that first, brother. Go ahead.
Hello, Flash. We're doing good here in California. We're training the next generation of skilled and trained union construction workers. Everything but commercial is going really well. And our building trades unions, our local building trades councils are out there securing work for the members.
We need to point out that Chris comes from the UA, United Association. Specifically, got to do a shout out here to Local 709. He's a 30-year union member, began his career as an apprentice at Sprinkler Fitters, UA Local 709, then became a journeyman apprenticeship instructor, and then president of the local, and now he's the head of the building trades. He's had that position for a number of years now. Chris, let's just get right into it. Proposition 45. What is Proposition 45?
Yeah, the most dangerous thing for building trades unions, but we also believe for the labor movement here in California, is something that known as Proposition 45, being sold on an environmental permitting reform act and affordability act. But really in the 41 pages, it bypasses environmental review. It takes away our voice at the local level. And there are no provisions within it to pass along any savings to anybody in the public. It's the most dangerous thing that we've faced in a long time, but it's not just the trades, it's everybody.
So who's behind this right now? How did this happen?
California Chamber of Commerce, believe they're trying to take advantage of everybody, not just in California, but throughout the country, struggling to afford groceries, afford housing, afford energy. We believe that they're trying to exploit the tough time that people are having and trying to have a jailbreak for all their for-profit members.
You mentioned that this threatens good union jobs. Can you be more specific? And I don't know if you can quantify a number here, but there's a lot of people you represent, and I'm sure you're very concerned about that. Do we have any data on that right now, or is it kind of premature?
Yeah, I think it's premature. The measure lines out essential projects like housing, energy, schools, broadband, and other categories. What's most dangerous, not only does it bypass California's landmark Environmental Quality Act, but it takes away the discretion of the local elected. So the lead agency, whether it's a city, a county, or other, the local elected has to approve the project. We believe that they tried to pacify building trades unions and members by putting in labor standards that are all subject to severability provisions in the agreement. So as they take away all of our voice, and not just in the trades, the public, you're one bad decision away from stripping away any protections, and those protections don't exist anywhere outside of the trades.
So, Chris, who's going to be calling the shots then? I mean, if they're taking away the voices of those on the local level, are we talking about those well, you said the chamber is pretty much behind that. So who's going to be calling the shots then?
So big housing developers and others, and those in California, a lot of work has happened over the last 10 years to streamline the approval process for housing. Within that process, right now in an urban census tract, which is much of California, infill settings, 20 acres and under is already exempt from California Environmental Quality Act. So this is about large subdivisions, greenfield projects, and it's not just for the housing. It's for projects with up to 50% of other uses, commercial, light commercial. So in one of these projects being approved, and there's no date certain when they have to start construction, they lock in their standards, but they also lock in the approval for all of that commercial, all of the other uses. So workers that work in those settings, they have no voice within their local community about what goes in there. So think of the UFCW advocating for workers in a grocery store or in a processing facility. Those opportunities will not exist at the local level. For firefighters that are expected to come in and save and bail us out of trouble, and much of California, as you probably know, is in a fire area, there is no requirements here to provide additional mitigations for environmental, for public health, for safety, and any additional sound reasoning to provide additional resources in there for the firefighters, maybe setbacks and other additional resources for when they come in there and save us. Those things are all gone. The project has to be approved. If they don't approve the project, the proponents can sue, and they even alter what the courts can consider in the case. So it really just strips away our voice, not only in the trades, but across all of the labor movement and across all communities.
So what I'm hearing in this conversation, Chris, I mean, there's two big things going on right now. Affordability, especially when it comes to housing. Mm-hmm. So it sounds to me that, it's a race to the bottom here. They want to cut you out. They would like to get rid of all the unions when it comes to that. I can hear that. The other part of this thing is less regulation. And, the current administration in Washington has been pushing, and it's been going on for decades, to be honest. But this administration is really, really cutting back on regulation. So that's kind of what I'm hearing in this whole thing. You put those two together, that's what led to Proposition 45 then, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, within the 41 pages, there's nothing in there that any savings get passed on to anybody. It's all about bypassing years of proven track record of protecting the environment, protecting communities, and allowing people to have a voice in the process. That's all gone for anything they want to build, basically.
And the election is coming up in November. Let's drive everybody to the website here, noprop45ca.com. Let me repeat that, noprop45ca.com. Chris, what I'm going to do in the next segment here is talk about how you're doing some coalition building. And part of that is the environmentalists. It's, I'll tell you, this is kind of interesting, too, because many times in years past, the unions, especially the trades unions and the environmentalists, were not on the same page. Different story on this one. I'll talk about that next. Chris Hannan is our featured guest on the show today. He is president of the State Building and Construction Trades Council of California. That website, by the way, is cabuildingtrades.org. Back in a few minutes, you're listening to America's Workforce.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
It takes LIUNA to keep America running. Over 70,000 public employees are part of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, delivering critical services such as healthcare and emergency response, as well as maintaining roads and sanitation systems. Even the National Postal Mail Handlers Union, representing over 47,000 U.S. postal workers, is affiliated with LIUNA. Find out what it takes for LIUNA to keep America running at liuna.org. That's liuna.org.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. You can find more at ifpte.org.
There is unity and strength for workers.
We are the USW.
We are the USW.
The United Steelworkers.
The largest industrial union in North America.
We represent 850,000 members in the U.S., Canada, and the Caribbean.
We work in metals,
rubber,
chemicals,
paper,
oil refining,
atomic energy, and the service sector.
We are steelworkers. standing strong and fighting for what's right.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Ironworkers. You can find more at ironworkers.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Heat and Frost Insulators Labor Management Cooperative Trust. Find out more at insulators.org/LMCT.
America's Workforce is sponsored in part by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, LLC. Find out more about our investment solutions tailored to meet the needs of Taft-Hartley funds at boydwatterson.com.
American workers are sick of struggling to get by. It's time to get ahead. In the Teamsters Union, workers are winning industry-leading contracts, historically high wages, fully paid health care, and retirement benefits you can count on. Across the country, Teamsters fight alongside our brothers and sisters to secure a better life. It's what we've been doing and how we've been living for more than a century. When we fight, we win. Join us. Be a Teamster.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
And remember, you can check us out on at least 5 platforms. That includes YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. And when you get an opportunity, here's what you do. Just sign up and receive our shows on a regular basis and give us a rating. Always appreciate those 5-star ratings, so please keep them coming. Let's go back to our featured guest today. We're talking about an initiative on the California ballot in November called Proposition 45, which is a big deal. And it could hurt a lot of unions, especially union construction when it comes to homes, commercial construction. Our featured guest is Chris Hannan, who is the president of the State Building and Construction Trades Council of California. We're talking almost 500,000 members there, 70,000 apprentices. And we want to make sure those apprentices have great careers in the building trades. And, you know, when you get legislation like this or a proposition like this, you got to wonder, obviously, there's people behind it that would like to race to the bottom, less regulations, get the unions out of there. I mean, that happens all the time in America. The partnership with environmentalists. You mentioned in the first segment here that the environmentalists are on board with you. Why don't you explain how that happened? And I'll tell you, this is interesting, too, because it's not always that you're on the same page with them. So this is a special moment here on the show. Talk to me about it, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Flash. It's not every day we're on the same page, and not only on the same page, but with really no daylight between us, between the building trades and the environmental movement. Our members don't get paid if they don't go to work. And a lot of times we're very passionate about building projects. And on this one, rewind back in history a bit, we've been staunch defenders along with the environmental movement of the California Environmental Quality Act. Within the building trades, we need to make sure that we can continue to build not only this project and for this year, but for decades into the future. With over 70,000 union construction apprentices training every year in California, we have to make sure that we have 30, 35 years in front of each one of them for those careers. And if we take shortcuts and we're not building sustainable projects that are sited properly, we end up facing things like moratoriums. Example, there's a moratorium in Los Angeles County on onshore wind. The environmental movement, the building trades, we know that we need wind in our portfolio for clean energy. It has to be built, it has to be sited properly. And we need things like storage to be able to make use of all those renewables. We need carbon capture to be able to decarbonize things that are difficult to decarbonize. There has to be a process for them to be done properly. Not only does this measure bypass the California Environmental Quality Act, it also has a provision within there where it overrides any conflicting law. So that means any protections for the environment, it is overriding and it is bypassing California's landmark law. So between the environmental community, environmental justice advocates, and skilled labor, we have a vested interest in defeating this measure together. And if you look on the website, you'll see the broad coalition gaining every day of over 270 organizations working together to get the word out that this is not what it seems. It's not about building affordable. It's about gutting protections. It's about bypassing communities and putting the cost of that back on the public.
Chris, while we're talking about the environment here, if you don't mind, I understand you're involved with a initiative, Climate Jobs California. I know a number of states have similar. New York has one as well. Where are we with that in the state of California with this going on right now, Chris?
So we're getting Climate Jobs California off the ground this year. We're already working on looking for ways to build more clean energy to better adapt to a changing climate and environment, and building in resilience. The work that's been done in New York and in various other states across the country has been solid, has been fantastic work. Labor partnering with academia to really look at the best practices to empower building things, but also doing it the right way, not only for the environment, but pro-worker. In California, we're lifting up Climate Jobs California and the Climate Jobs California Action Fund, and we're going to do fantastic work here.
Well, keep us posted on that one. But let's get back to Proposition 45. You mentioned a lot of groups are lined up against this. It sounds like a lot, but what are you hearing? What kind of feedback are you getting from the community? Now, it's August. We're looking at November. I mean, that could be light years away. Things change dramatically in the world today, but I'm just wondering, what are you hearing now and what needs to be done, especially those listening to this podcast right now?
Yeah, well, I believe the chamber has a catchy phrase about affordability and about having protections for the environment and having worker protections. But within the 41 pages, that's just not the case. So when we're able to get the message out, what the measure really does, folks like the California Democratic Party, the California Federation of Labor, have all taken no positions on Proposition 45. And we need to get the word out. We need to have broad coalitions that this doesn't just affect the trades. This doesn't just affect people that care about our environment. This affects everybody. When they're talking about being able to approve a project without any meaningful environmental review, and some of those things include things like hydrogen and carbon capture, any associated infrastructure, where those pipelines go, it's important. And what's built around your kid's school is important. It's important to educators to have a voice if a school's being built on an area that wasn't properly remediated. Is it appropriate to be a safe environment for children? So there's a lot at stake. We got to make sure that we get out the message that if you're concerned about the environment around your kid's school, you have to be able to retain a voice within your local community. You have to have a process like the California Environmental Quality Act that allows the public to participate and actually have meaningful mitigation, identifying risks. So we have to get the message out. It's all hands on deck. We're raising money to be able to get a message out. We're mobilizing boots on the ground, not just the 450,000 within the building trades, but the broader labor movement has a unanimous position coming out of our endorsement convention, no on Prop 45. So we have to get out there, talk to our neighbors, and certainly we have to raise enough money to be able to tell the real story about this dangerous proposition.
Well, the late House Speaker Tip O'Neill often said all politics is local. I remember that, and he was very, very vocal about that. With that being said, what are your elected leaders saying about this? Are they going out and talking to the community about Proposition 45?
Do you know what? We have a number of electeds that are as passionate as we are about this. We don't have a ton of elected leader endorsements. We're working on those right now. But as we talk to those elected leaders, they're as surprised as your neighbors are when we tell them about some of the provisions within the 41 pages. So as we build momentum, and we're building a tremendous amount of momentum coming out of the California Democratic Party's executive board meeting, where the party took a no position but this is important to rural areas as well. This is important to suburban homeowners. This is important to everybody, not just Democrats and union members. This is important to everybody. We got to make sure that we're active. We got to make sure that we're aware of our surroundings. We have to make sure that we're talking about the things in the 41-page initiative that the proponents are not talking about, the things they don't want to talk about, the things that they want buried in fine print.
Yeah, very common in the political world today. Chris, thank you so much for your time here. Let me drive everybody to the website, Chris, here. Vote no on Proposition 45, no Prop 45CA, like California, no Prop 45CA.com. That's the website you want to go to. Anything else you want to say here before we button it up?
Across the country, everybody listening to this great podcast, be aware of your surroundings. Be active in your union. We need to make sure that as we're moving this movement forward, as we're trying to do better for each other, we're taking no steps backwards. And this is a time, with different things coming at us, we just all have to be aware. We have to be active, and we have to work together. Thank you so much, Flash, for having the State Building Trades on, and look forward to talking to you again here real soon.
You got it. Anytime, brother. Chris Hannan, our featured guest on the show today, president of the State Building and Construction Trades Council of California, and their website is cabuildingtrades.org. And that'll be it for another edition of America's Workforce. Coming up on Monday, a look at the history of labor law and the North Coast Labor Federation, featuring the Cleveland Teachers Union. Until then, all of you have a safe and wonderful weekend.
That concludes another episode of the America's Workforce Radio Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. America's Workforce is a production of Labor Tools and BMA Media Group. Find out more information online at labortools.com.